So Eric Hinman and I, we were talking about it this morning. I asked him, does cold immersion get any easier for you? Like, what is your inner dialogue before you get into a raging river, before you get into the ice barrel? And he said 4 years ago, he was much more hardened, but now because he's done it so often and it hasn't gotten any easier, he almost doesn't want to do it. But then after, he has an even higher dopamine effect and dopamine response because he inside was like, I don't want to do this. This is not comfortable at all. And then he did it, and it was like that true type 2 fun response where all of a sudden you're like, I'm on top of the world.
Yeah.
Like if you would have heard out loud my inner dialogue prior to me getting into the ice barrel yesterday, we had our first snow in Cleveland. I contemplated for maybe like 20 minutes about getting in. I was like, it's only going to be 2 minutes. Just do it. And I did it, and it was an immediate, thank God I did that.
Yeah.
It was an immediate response.
Even you, someone that owns an amazing sauna brand, you do sauna cold plunge, I would imagine almost every single day, you're still sitting there with that resistance because it doesn't get easier.
Yeah, and I think that people misconstrue that because we're so consistent about it, it's easy. Yeah. It's never easy.
Yep.
It is actually what I find harder because like you're doing more frequent bouts of it.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily crave the sensation of doing it, but you crave the response of after doing it. And that's where I think, where the world needs to go is more type 2 fun, more like healthier dopamine responses outside of like drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
And it's just specifically for cold plunge, less of sauna. I think the barrier for entry for sauna is much lower. Anybody wants to get in a sauna, but once you get to like 20 minutes, like, do you actually want to stay in?
100%.
But for cold, you're despising it before you get in, but then all it takes is 20 seconds and you're good.
Yeah.
And you could control your breathing.
Yeah.
And when you get out, it's just this massive endorphin rush.
Dude, it affects you the rest of the day. Did you ever get into Entourage?
No, but you're like the 5th person to tell me. So it sounds like I need to.
It's an amazing show, and it's like you can bang through the series. It's such a good show, but the talent agent who's one of the main characters, Ari Gold, he's based off of a real life agent who's Ari Emanuel.
Yeah.
So he's the founder of William Morris Endeavor, which is like the biggest talent agency. They bought the UFC. The guy's a mogul. And I was listening to him on a podcast because it's so cool how a lot of these moguls are now publicly sharing their story. Yeah. And he's a huge sauna cold plunge guy. And he was saying, and he's got a really dialed in morning routine, but he was saying that he really listens to the voice of things that he doesn't want to do, and that's actually his guiding principle. Yep. So it's kind of similar to what you talked about, where when he goes in the cold plunge, he's like, I don't want to do this. So for him, it's, I have to do this because my voice is telling me I don't want to do it, which means that it's probably good for me too.
And so he has experience of knowing that, though.
Yes.
Most people haven't done enough hard shit to realize that inner dialogue is actually a healthy, normal dialogue.
Yeah.
And so when you lean into it and you actually go past that dialogue and do the opposite of what your inner dialogue is telling you to do, you could really find out great things about yourself. But that sensation and that inner dialogue never changes.
Totally.
It never does. As mentally hardened as you want to say, like even David Goggins, if you read his second book, he literally talks about how he still has that inner bitch voice,
dude,
come out all the time. And he's quote unquote the toughest guy in the world.
Yes.
Right. He still has the same sensations that we all go through. It's just he goes past it and chooses to do the opposite of what his inner dialogue is. So it's just a very natural human response when we're faced with challenge.
Yeah, I think he says that his like minimum running dose is somewhere between like 8 miles at the lowest and 20 miles at the highest every single day.
Yep.
And he'll stare at his running shoes for 30 minutes still.
Think about that. So think about all the conversations that he has in his mind with himself.
Yeah.
That's powerful. And so the more that people realize that this is a normal thing, I think that's when it's going to allow people to finally push past some barriers and understand that it's just normal.
Yeah.
Work past that dialogue and start making something of yourself.